Hello, this is D, and I'm back with another video. Today, we're going to talk about the next generation Xbox and if it's actually going to be made by AMD. We're also going to talk about Hi-Fi Rush going to other platforms. First, let's start off with Hi-Fi Rush. Now, over the weekend, some reports have come out from a data miner that found information that Hi-Fi Rush is going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch as well as the PlayStation 5. Now, the data miner found some shirts that have exclusive colors. So the Xbox color shirt in the game was green. It's going to be blue for the PlayStation. It's going to be red for, I think it's either red or yellow for Nintendo. And Tom Warren actually backed this up. So it's looking like Hi-Fi Rush is going to be coming to other platforms. Now, I don't understand everyone getting upset about this and thinking that the whole slate of Xbox games are going to arrive on PlayStation 5 day and date. That's just not going to happen. Xbox is still going to have its exclusives. Now, I think in a sense of Hi-Fi Rush, I think it makes sense to bring it to other platforms. Like I've said in previous videos, we've had this game on the Xbox platform for over 6 months now. I think it's fine to release it on other platforms. It doesn't mean that this game, or I should say other games from Microsoft, are going to appear on other platforms as well. I think certain games it's going to make sense, and Hi-Fi Rush is a game where it makes sense. They'll be able to make more money putting it on Nintendo and putting it on PlayStation, which would allow them to do a sequel. I think that's good for everybody, and I think a sequel would show up first on Xbox, and I think it would trickle over to the other platforms at a later date, similar to what they're doing with Hi-Fi Rush. So I think it's much ado about nothing. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think everyone should be worried that all Xbox exclusives are going to appear on other platforms. I just don't think that's the case. Now, the main story that I want to talk about today is the next generation Xbox, that it could be lagging behind the PlayStation 6 and maybe released later than Sony's console. Now, this is coming from WCCF Tech, and like usual, I'll leave a link in the description down below so you guys can check it out for yourself. Now, going through some of the comments here under the post, I see one guy says this means that the next Xbox will have a far bigger gap than the Series X has over the PlayStation 5. Now, we're going to get into the article, but I don't know where they would get that information, because if this article is credible and if this information is true, that would actually confirm that the Xbox is going to come out later than the PlayStation 6. And I don't know if it would be more powerful per se, because according to this article, AMD might not be making the hardware in the next generation of Xbox consoles. So we're going to get into the article, and like usual, it's linked in the description down below. Now, the article goes on to say the next generation Xbox could be lagging behind the PlayStation 6 and maybe released later than Sony's console, according to rumors circulating online. In a recent podcast, Moore's Law is Dead commented on some interesting behind-the-scene happenings that suggest the next generation console by Microsoft could have entered a design phase only recently, and up until last month, Microsoft had not signed a next generation contract with AMD, as opposed to Sony, who signed multiple post-PS5 contracts. This apparently is normal behavior for Microsoft every generation, as the company shops around in an attempt to get AMD to lower their prices. Now, first, I want to comment on Moore's Law is Dead. Now, he gets some things right, he gets some things wrong, and I've seen him get a lot of things wrong. I don't want to say that this information is not credible, but I gotta say, like everything, we gotta take it with a grain of salt. So taking this article and this information at face value, it is basically saying that Microsoft is shopping around potentially for the hardware that's going to be in their next Xbox console. Now, the article goes on to say this time around, however, Microsoft seemed to be more serious in shopping around for their next generation Xbox silicon, as the company did not talk with AMD until very recently. Having come to learn about this, Intel started bidding to produce the silicon for the console, apparently offering extremely low prices and the full capacity of its fabs. Intel saw this opening as a huge opportunity to salvage ARC and its fabs at the same time. Now, that is a very interesting offer, and Microsoft, they're going to think about it. They're going to think about how is this going to impact our production, because if they have the full capacity of Intel's fabs, they'll be able to crank out a lot of consoles, and of course, they're going to be at the top of the totem pole when it comes to Intel wanting to get these chips out to them. So I think from a cost incentive, it would also be cheaper, because Intel would want to get into the market, and apparently they're giving them very low prices, so that would mean that they would make more profit. And we know that Microsoft likes profit. Of course they do. What company doesn't? Now, the Intel CPU, it's good. I don't want to say they make bad CPUs. I gotta say though, they're no longer the top dog. AMD makes some really good CPUs that are highly efficient and perform better in a lot of scenarios than the Intel counterparts, especially when it comes to gaming. Now, gaming, Intel used to see a huge lead over AMD. That no longer is the case. Now, the article goes on to say while Microsoft is yet to sign a contract with anyone for its next generation Xbox, Moore's Law Dead thinks it's likely the company will still go with AMD once again. However, things seem to be lagging behind Sony and its PlayStation 6, as due to this delay, the console may have only entered the design phase recently. This could make Microsoft release a console later than Sony's next generation system or rush to release it to launch it together with the competition. Now, let's get back on Intel. Now, Intel, their CPUs are okay, so that would be all right. But their architecture, it's okay, but it's not great. And it's definitely not a step above AMD. So I just don't see Microsoft going with Intel for their CPU and GPU. I just don't see it happening. Interestingly, though, I would love to see NVIDIA hardware inside their console. Now, that would make a statement, and I think that would generate a lot of sales. Now, AMD and NVIDIA are bitter rivals, and AMD makes great CPUs, they make great GPUs. I think they really shine in their CPUs. Their GPUs, they're just not as good as what NVIDIA has to offer. Now, when it comes to rasterization of games, I think they're about on par, and in some games, AMD has superior rasterization over NVIDIA. But when it comes to all the features like DLSS, AI upscaling, when it comes to path tracing, when it comes to ray tracing, NVIDIA has superior hardware and performance over AMD. Now, their upscaling is far better than what AMD offers. I'm not saying AMD's FSR is bad. It's not, but it's not as good. It's not as clean as DLSS. It just isn't. AMD now has frame generation, and I would say their frame generation is almost on par with, or if not on par with, what NVIDIA is doing. But once again, their upscaling isn't as good, so you're not getting the same type of quality from the images or the video that's being displayed when you're using this technology. It just doesn't look as crisp. So NVIDIA would be the natural ascension for Microsoft if they wanted to change the hardware in their systems. Now, the problem is NVIDIA charges a lot of money. Now, if I'm correct, I think they did use something from NVIDIA in the original Xbox and something with the licensing, and they kind of like broke away from them, and that's when they went with AMD. Now, this is just wishful thinking on my part. I got to be honest with you guys. I do agree with the article. I think that Microsoft will stay with AMD. I think financially, it just makes sense for them to stay with AMD. But my problem with AMD is that their hardware is just not up to par with NVIDIA. Now, the next generation of Radeon cards, of RDNA architecture that's going to be on these GPUs, I hope at least they catch up in ray tracing performance, because let's be honest, ray tracing performance on NVIDIA is far superior. So superior that they're running laps around AMD, and they're now producing path traced games. That is just incredible that in 2024, I can actually play path trace games at 4K above 60 FPS. Yes, NVIDIA is using frame generation and ray reconstruction, but the technology works extremely well. You're getting a very clean and crisp image. And I gotta say that frame generation on NVIDIA has improved. In the beginning, I wasn't really a fan of it because it added a lot of latency. I'm not saying there isn't latency when you're using it. However, it has improved tremendously over launch. Now, I wouldn't play it like on Call of Duty, a competitive first-person shooter game, or any type of competitive game. But for a single player game, a role-playing game, the technology is fine and it looks fantastic, and there's little to no latency. You really don't feel it. And like I said, as long as it's not competitive. In my honest opinion, if the next Xbox were to have NVIDIA hardware, I think a lot of gamers would buy it for that alone. So that's like wishful thinking once again on my part. I really don't think that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure they're going to stay with AMD, but it is interesting that they are kind of open to at least the competition perhaps producing the hardware for the next generation system. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think that Microsoft is going to stick with AMD to produce their hardware for their next generation console? Do you think that this article and this rumor is baseless and that Microsoft already is far in development for their next generation Xbox console? Or do you think that this rumor is perhaps true and that Microsoft is shopping around now? If that is the case, would you want to see them get with Intel, or would you like to see Nvidia hardware in the next generation Xbox? Let me know in the comment section down below. And like I usually say, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.